Right then, let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the two-on-one Powerchair Football Podcast powered by MK Battery. Today is International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a really important moment for us as a sport and a chance to reflect on the work being done across the WFA to create opportunities, raise standards, and support disabled people at every stage of their football journey. Before we dive into the main discussion, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge MK Battery. Their support doesn't just power this podcast, it powers every single WFA National League live stream and underpins so much of the visibility and reach the sport now has. They're also a key partner in our grassroots development work, supporting new club provision, helping us expand into new areas and backing the growth of the sport at its foundation. So a huge thank you to MK Battery for everything they do. We have got some incredibly exciting updates to share with the Powerchair football community today. A lot has been happening behind the scenes over the past few months, work that has been shaped collectively by the development team alongside the wider executive committee of the Wheelchair Football Association. And today felt like the perfect moment to talk openly about what's changing, why it's changing, and what this next phase means for players, coaches, clubs, and the community as a whole. To help me unpack all of that, I'm joined by two people who've been right in the centre of this journey. First, WFA Chairperson Dean Williams, who's been responsible for steering the direction of the association and making sure the decisions we make align with the long-term ambitions of the WFA. Dean, how are you?
I'm very good, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm not bad at all. Not bad at all,
Good.
thank you. And alongside him, the new Senior Development Manager for Education and Workforce, Adam McEvoy, who's played a major role in shaping what we're discussing today. Ad, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Ryan. Nice to see you, and nice to see you too, Dean. Looking forward to today's discussion and catch up.
Yeah, it should be a really exciting one. We've already arrived in December and we're fast approaching 2026. It's been such an incredibly busy, eventful year for the sport, full of big moments on and off the court, and so much has happened across the National League, international tournaments, development work, and everything in between. Before we dive into what's to come, I'd love to hear a couple of your standout moments, memories from the year. We'll dedicate a whole episode to recap in 2025 as we did in 2024. So I don't need a full deep dive, just the immediate highlights that spring to mind when you look back on 2025. Dean?
That is such a big question, isn't it? Because it has been extraordinary year in so many ways. So, I mean, football first, if we think about the competitive nature of the Championship and the Premiership, part of our Slater and Gordon, as it's named now, National League, that is just a pleasure to watch that grow and look at the standard increase in terms of the players and the coaches that we have on display. So I think that's always going to be a highlight. That's the football first sentiment. I mean, behind the scenes, which is fundamentally my role alongside the trustees and the leadership team to make sure we are growing the sport in the way that we want to grow it. More on that in a few moments' time. There's just so many significant things that have happened. So we had a big moment, didn't we, halfway through this year, just a fraction over in Lincoln City Football Club, doing a review of our first full year of the strategy. So just the opportunity to sit down and then think about what is it we've done extremely well and what are we proud of, what are we pleased with in terms of progress that we're making, but then spinning that into what's the stuff that we need to be doing even better, even more. And as we already alluded to, Ryan, alongside our strategy and our vision. So for some people, they'll be sitting there thinking, are they highlights? In my role, they are highlights because my responsibility, which I take, as you guys will know, and the community will hopefully know very seriously, That's what it's about. Our responsibility is to govern and grow the sport. So many things. I mean, commerciality is probably one specific thing I'll talk about. Our ability now to attract more people towards the sport that brings in income and revenue that enables us to grow. We are now at record levels in terms of the commerciality that we bring in and the amount of partnerships that we are hosting. So again, it's goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It's a thanks on the podcast to all of the people that join us and partner with us, because without them, we're not even able to follow the lines of ambition that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So a personal thanks from me, but such a hard question, Ryan.
Well, as mentioned, we sat down right on the cusp of 2025, and I think we signified our top 10 moments between us of the year, and we'll do the same. So, but overall, a fantastic summary. Just on your point about the executive committee meeting at Lincoln City Football Club, assessing the strategy. A lot of what was discussed in that meeting will come out within this podcast, and I'm sure what you said wouldn't be much of an update to the wider community. Most certainly will be, because it's unprecedented. It's a complete game changer, and that's why we're so excited to get here and discuss collectively. Adam, what about yourself? A very busy year with your many different hats.
That's putting it mildly, Ryan. Yeah, absolutely. I think just aside from that, to begin with, I think, and the modesty of our chair, Mr. Williams, there, I think some of the efforts, certainly from his good self and Nick Woodward with the Good Road to Derby with their monumental 200-mile bicycle ride, should be rightly highlighted and celebrated. Likewise, Matthew Stevens, his coast to coast walk as well, two fantastic events to contribute and raise funds for our benevolent fund, which was absolutely fantastic. And then tying into that, obviously, we had our cup linking to the Disability FA Cup final weekend as well, which was another fantastic event for us. And then, yes, as you rightly say, I suppose from a slightly different hat point of view, the week at St George's Park with United States over, which was a wonderful opportunity for the players to be together, get a lot of contact time, and obviously play the fixtures that we did, and obviously have a lot of people come along to cheer the squad on. And then obviously the Euros as well, for the most part, in terms of obviously reaching the final, but just being part of that from a personal point of view as an event and a spectacle and a challenge for me as well has been it's been highly challenging, but a lot to take from into 2026.
Yeah, some absolutely incredible memories. I loved being on the periphery of that historic week-long camp at St George's Park, the Ep for Nations Cup. I'd even include the Club World Cup, watching our two English representatives, whilst they didn't come home with the ultimate honour, they did us proud, and it bodes incredibly well for the future. To Dean's point, the commerciality, the growing partnerships and the relationships we have with the likes of John Good Group, Slater and Gordon, MK Battery, Swizzles, to mention just four, has been amazing. And I would say more broadly, just the quality, the consistency, the profile of the domestic sport in England. I'm biased. We're all biased, and we'll probably say it's the best worldwide. But I would say that with complete confidence. And watching the kickstart of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon National League has just been incredible. And I'm already excited for game week 2 of the Premiership, which will be kicking off in exactly 10 days' time. Now, as mentioned at the start, this episode is landing on the 3rd of December, and it makes sense to begin with the reason why we're here today, the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. It's always a significant moment for Powerchair Football and for the WFA because of what it gives us as a sport, a really valuable moment to almost pause, to reflect, to recognize the contributions disabled people make across every single part of our community. The theme for IDPD 2025 is fostering disability inclusive societies for advancing social progress, which may sound a little bit confusing, but I can assure you that feels particularly relevant to Powerchair Football and more importantly, what we're discussing today, because at its heart, the theme is about making sure disabled people can fully participate, fully contribute, fully belong, not just in sport, but in society as a whole. And while every day in Powerchair Football celebrates disabled people, today is almost where disability is centered nationally, even globally, shining the lights on the stories, the achievements, the experiences that often go unseen. And it gives us space to reflect on how we continue breaking down barriers, whether it's around participation, whether it's around opportunity, employment, visibility, or representation. So it fits so well. The theme, as said, also talks about advancing social progress. And again, that could not align more closely with where the WFA is trying to go, because advancing social progress isn't just about what happens on the court. It's about ensuring disabled people have access to pathways, to support systems, long-term opportunities that genuinely improve lives off of it. And I'm sure Dean and Adam would agree. We've always been clear that anything we do around IDPD has to be meaningful. It has to contribute to the long-term development of the sport and strengthen the opportunities available to disabled people. And that's exactly why today's announcement feels so powerful, because what we're about to discuss is not only unprecedented, it speaks directly to the core values of IDPD: empowerment, investment, accessibility, opportunity. The list goes on and on. Gents, from your perspective, what does IDPD represent for the WFA and the sport more broadly? Why is it such an important point in the year for us?
I think, Ryan, you said that beautifully. So let me try and add a little bit to that in terms of my view of it. So if we take off the definition of IDPD, promoting the rights, well-being, quality with people with disabilities, I mean, for me, absolutely right that we should have that and create a space, as you've called it, in terms of building the awareness of, particularly for me, the quality that exists with people with disabilities and the countless things that they are able to do. That's one thing about the day, but let's be clear, everything we do should be in line with that day. So I feel that we're in a very responsible position to make sure we are enabling and promoting all of what's already been said. So my responsibility extends way beyond a day, but that's important to give it the space and that awareness. It's a pursuit of all of us, from my perspective, in terms of me as chair, the trustees, the leadership team, and our community will feel that as well, for all of us to have this as something we are committed to every single day. That's the level of responsibility that I'd see with this. So really, really important for us to recognize it, but then also challenge ourselves in terms of what are we doing every single day to help in line with what IDPD stands for.
Yeah, completely. What about yourself, Ad?
I think for us, it's when I look at this, I always smile because as an organization, I feel as if that is something that is part of our core, part of our being around how we can support social development, how we can enable that growth of society with the participation of everyone. So it's how can everyone contribute effectively? So whether it's examples such as those of our committee members that have got disabilities, or those that are working on some of the great things that we've got going on behind the scenes, or some of the things that are outward facing, such as one example of the wonderful work of Jack Humphreys and the WFA Scoreline app. they're just small examples of how that contributes towards that social development of society, and they're taking the forefront and leading on these to be able to obviously ultimately grow who we are and what we do. But they're just small examples of how people with disabilities can make huge contributions to society and have a lot of knowledge, expertise, and value to add to that. And it links to, and obviously we'll touch on this now, one of the core strands of our medium-term strategy around more than football and what we can do as an organization to support our community to access opportunities which are more than football.
Yeah, I think you've both summed it up perfectly. Days like this, they do really remind us what the sport, what the WFA stands for, what it gives, and why the work behind the scenes matters just as much as what happens kind of on the court in the public eye. And with that in mind, it feels like the right moment to move on to some of the changes that have been happening across the WFA over the past few months, because everything you've both just touched on, opportunity, representation, long-term support, it's right at the heart of the next update. As the sport continues to grow, with more clubs forming, more young players coming through, rising expectations, increasing demands around development, education, workforce, it became really clear that we needed to look at how we as an association was structured behind the scenes. Not because something was broken, but because we needed to ensure that our setup, our capacity could keep pace with where we want Powerchair football to head. So over the past few months, not many will be aware. I think it's fair to say the WFA has gone through a period of significant internal restructuring, adjusting roles slightly, aligning priorities, putting in a framework that strengthens our foundations. And these changes were essential for delivering on commitments set out in the medium-term strategy. And importantly, they've helped create the clarity and, again, importantly, the capacity needed to finally push forward with some of the bigger pieces of work we've wanted to activate. So, Dean, from your position as chair, what was your experience of guiding this restructure? What were the biggest changes you felt were needed, and how important has this whole process been for the association going forward?
Yeah, so it's a kind of pleasure to do that. So let's go back quite a few steps because in my mind, it's always been connected in terms of to the medium-term strategy. So let's just pick up those bits there. So medium-term strategy, we deliberately used when we set that, and this was a few months after I started. Our last season was the first full season, so we're now in a second season of that. But we started to do several things that were really important that probably didn't go unnoticed at all. It's medium term for a reason. I wanted people, every single member of our community, to feel a vision for what Powerchair football could look like in England going forward, and not for it to be too long-term orientated. So if we start thinking in terms of 10 years from now, 15 years from now, my job and the job of the trustees and the exec team is to think around parameters like that. But actually, when you think about a communication document and setting a pathway for people to get their heads around, I actually felt that there are two things that are really important. Number one, let's minimize the time period that we're talking about. So we started to shift it to 3 seasons. And the second point is deliberately around that word seasons. Stop talking in years, start talking in seasons. That's our game after all. So if people have taken the time to look at the medium-term strategy, of course, for us, as we all know, it's a bit of a Bible. But the reality is, if you look at that document, it gives you a picture for what Powerchair football will look like in the future, but very much medium-term future. That was already specifically probably the first significant move into where we find ourselves right now. All of these things just take a little bit of time. So the essence, if we boil down the medium-term strategy, there are two words that are important. They're all over the document: govern and grow. Our responsibility to make sure alongside the FA we govern the sport is one thing. And of course, you could argue that, well, that's all you need to do. That for someone like myself and the wonderful people I work with, that's never enough. We have a responsibility to make this better day by day by day, season on season. So the strategy itself sets out ambition for us to grow. Growing means bringing in additional income, clearly, as a main component part to establish more opportunity and more things that we can achieve alongside that ambition. So that's where the process started. So I'm thinking people listening to the podcast, bear with me, because that's a significant first step that we made on it. Within that document, we produced what we called core foundations, which effectively are, you could call them values. For me, they're more about a moral compass. The decisions that we actually make and the paths that we go down should be guided by a simple set of things. The four foundations are again weaved within that document. And one of those core foundations was the word opportunity. So when we talk about things like growing the sport, it was always in our heads when we went down this particular path and this journey to think about opportunity both on and off the court, the pitch, and to make sure that we were doing things that just developed opportunity alongside what we're talking about with recognizing people with disabilities, more opportunity in the playing sense, but more opportunity off it. So Adam's already alluded to a phrase that's within the document, which is more than just football. So that gives a little bit of context about some time ago, we started to go down this journey. If you think about growing is about, you've used the word already, Ryan, which is capacity. It's growing capacity. So in order for us to grow sustainably, nobody wants us to do things that are here today and gone tomorrow. We don't want that. What we want is to be able to implement things that we believe create immense opportunity within the sport and then for them to continue. So as soon as we reach that milestone and those significant factors, we don't go back from that, we build on that again. I'm going to be hugely respectful. Adam, you kind of made me blush a bit when you were signaling out the work of Nick and I on that crazy bike ride, which I'm still suffering from a little bit right now. So thanks for bringing that back to my core thinking. But when we think about that, I'm going to praise you guys. You are the two full-time members of staff that we have. We are incredibly lucky within the association, the charity, to have you two. And have you two means that we're incredibly lucky to have you from an FTE perspective, but actually we're lucky to have the quality and the commitment and the care and the passion and the skill that you guys have. So there's the bit that should make you blush on screen, which of course nobody will be able to see, but I can see that's registering with my perfect intention on that. Outside of you two, as you know, we're a bunch of volunteers. Effectively, that's it. So when you put a strategy together, you've got to be very, very careful around, I don't want to break people. I have a duty of care for you two individuals, of course, but also my fellow leadership team as well, trustees. So I need to make sure that when we're doing this, it's considered to a point that we can actually go and achieve these things that are in addition to what we're doing already, but respecting the dynamics that are at play. So the question some time ago, probably about a year ago, that was in my head was, here's a simple question. Is there a catalyst for growing sustainability and building capacity? That was the question. You can sit there and think about, well, we'll just get more partnership deals and do that. That brings, as you will know, Ryan, all too well, it brings its own flow of work that comes with that, because of course we would never not want to look after our incredible sponsorships and partnerships that we have of our people in place. So bringing in additions to that actually mean that it increases workload a little bit. So I wanted to look a little bit outside of that. There then were conversations with the community. I would hope that, and again, it's an open invitation list, that my community feels that they can always come to me and share innovation ideas or challenges or concerns that they might have. All of those things, when people do that, and there were some significant moments on this, they don't go unnoticed and they get listened to. That's my promise. Within that, there are lots of noises coming out around, is there more that we can do in the community in terms of they love Powerchair football so much, giving it as part of the game is one thing, but it was flagged, things like the apprenticeship schemes potential was flagged. And I thought, well, that's quite interesting. So let's have a little look underneath that. So the answer to the question, go back to that, is there a catalyst for growing sustainability and building capacity? Where we landed was yes, developing an apprenticeship scheme could well be something, it will be something that ultimately benefits our community, There will be eligibility factors that we go into. That's one thing. It won't be for everyone in terms of choice that they make, in terms of what they might want to do. We'll get into the detail of some of those as we go further into the podcast. But the spirit of just looking at an apprenticeship scheme does in itself create opportunity. So Adam and I were talking about this the other day. It's from first meeting on this, when it became that seed of an idea, it was a year ago, wasn't it, Ads? Which is quite incredible, really. So my characteristic will not allow me just to do anything without doing proper due diligence. And then it's about considering what's the right time. When do I think we've got optimum time to launch something which enables us to move to something which benefits our community massively? The determination since the start of November was now is the right time. But I think it's quite useful, isn't it, for the community to know that behind the scenes, this is almost a bit of a year in the making in terms of the first seed of an idea and then doing that due diligence. So once we decided to go with that, and to get to the point about the restructure, Ryan, in particular, we then needed a dedicated resource. Again, I'll go back to my comments on you guys. I thought the restructure was relatively easy to do because of the quality of you guys to sit down and do whatever you need to do that helps, alongside the medium-term strategy, grow the WFA. But by the same token, I've got to know you over the course of 2.5 years, and I understand the quality and where those component parts sit. So for Adam in particular, for me, it was if he wanted to go into that role, and he's been fantastic on that. Again, blush moment for you there, Adam. But for me, it was always going to be looking at education and workforce, something that suited some of Adam's natural skill set. So the opportunity to move into that, to do some meticulous planning, give it that dedicated resource, and then open up this opportunity, which we'll get into the detail. Fundamentally, I saw that piece very, very clearly. So what this is about, and again, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder on this, the apprenticeship scheme will bring in opportunity for people alongside eligibility and people wanting to go into that. And we'll kind of have answers in terms of how we process our way through that in a few moments' time. But this is about producing something of substance, an official qualification, but also the opportunity to get more involved with what we are doing at the WFA. And that could be numerous opportunities to do that. And by doing that, ultimately, that builds and helps build our capacity. It gets us fit for the future to move forward and do more great things that we've got planned, even outside of what we're talking about now. The setup of the scheme also will enable us, without going too much into the detail, to look at the FTEs. So people like yourselves, Adam and Ryan, it will look at how we move and transition into perhaps increasing the size of FTEs that we have within the business. So more simply put, more people, brilliant people with care and diligence and skill and quality to enable us to go and do more things. So I don't want to use this podcast as an announcement for what those roles might be in the future, but let's just say those roles will be senior roles responsible for operationally driving the business to an even greater level in a future state. I'm happy to say the next bit, I anticipate that we might be able to move to that structure in a relatively short space of time, but don't forget how I think. So I would be happy to suggest that in 12 months' time, the picture could look really different again, going into the next evolution for the WFA. So that's that's a long answer, but a little bit of history, but I think it's all relevant, because I think the one thing I want to recognize out of that is for people to understand that these things don't just happen. They take meticulous planning and a lot of vision and a lot of strategic thinking to get to a certain stage. And I'm delighted that we've reached this stage. Hard work to do now. Nothing's going to be in a box with a bow around it to start with. It doesn't matter. We are on the process of building this now. And I'm excited about where this leaves the WFA, what it offers for the community, but where it leaves the WFA in terms of future years to come. So absolutely delighted to have got to this point. That's a long answer.
Yeah, it is a long answer, but it's incredibly exciting that kind of the announcement, the launch of an apprenticeship scheme, which we will unpack in much more detail in a little bit. But just can you just provide an overarching view of the restructure, the different roles, the changes, and how they fit together quickly?
Yeah. So yeah, good question, Ryan. So for Adam, the senior development manager role in terms of education and workforce, that's that's critically going to be, there's a lot more, as Adam would be quick to point out, than just the apprenticeship scheme, but there's a massive focus of concentration around building that and then running that, facilitating that for our community. That's a huge bit. So that's the big part of that role. But also, as Adam, you can come into this if you need to. But from a safeguarding, from a perspective in terms of growing the coaches, growing the referees and the officials within the game, there are a few other touch points that all sit within that role. Ryan, it's just too easy to say that you're stepping into Adam's role as National Development Manager. It's a lot more than that, as we know, because if you think about that, one of the careful considerations was how do we get you from your role, which you did with painstaking excellence in terms of National Development Officer role, and how would first and foremost recognize the quality that you've got and put you into that managerial setting, but also not lose the brilliance that we have in terms of the social side of what we do to raise the awareness, but also managing and taking such a responsible line in terms of the partnerships and the commerciality that comes within that business. So they'll recognize some of your role because of the role that Adam was doing previously, but my goodness me, have we lifted and expanded that role? I can see you smiling. Just your mouth is hidden by the mic, but I know you're smiling just from the eyes. So it's a huge role for both of you guys to pick up. Duty of care. I'd only be doing this if I felt that you absolutely could thrive in those roles, but it's hard work, right? But I can't think of any two people that I want right by my side to lead this next evolution of the sport, and I hope you feel the same sincerely.
Absolutely. So it's a congratulations to Adam. You're stepping into the role of Senior Development Manager for Education and Workforce, as Dean alluded to. What has the restructure meant for your area of work? I know Dean touched on certain elements, but maybe give an overview of what now sits under your remit. And once you've explained that, I can probably jump in and talk a little bit about what those changes have meant for my own role and some of the areas I'm involved in under the new structure.
Yeah, so obviously we will touch on and go into a little bit more depth on the apprenticeship program that we are looking to introduce in the short term. But yes, taking a lead on that to make sure it is set up and structured and everything behind the scenes is in place, ready for its rollout, and then obviously the subsequent delivery of that. And then if you touch on things from a workforce perspective, it's effectively, if I could put it in a sentence, it would be how can how can we take workforce development within the WFA and Powerchair football to the next level? So just a couple of small examples would be around increasing the quality of what we have from a coaching and a refereeing standpoint. So a really exciting example from a match officials and refereeing point of view is some work that's taking place with the FA at the moment around the adoption of the Powerchair match officials course under the FA framework. So coming under their banner of one of the courses that is available for match officials to take to learn more about becoming an official in Powerchair football. Because from our point of view, if we can highlight that and bring new officials to our game, it's going to obviously increase the depth of the workforce, but also then hopefully look to increase the quality of the workforce, maybe put a little bit less stress and pressure on some of our fantastic officials to then maybe take a little bit more of a role which can support with the mentoring and the development of new officials going forward. So that's something that is taking a lot of work at the moment in terms of its shaping, but to have that as part of the FA's framework for officials as a course you can take is again world leading, but also really, really exciting because it's going to open the doors and open a lot of new eyes to Powerchair officiating and just getting involved in the sport. And then, as we know too well, if you really take to Powerchair football and you want to get involved, we should have a really strong uptake of people that are intrigued by our game and really want to support it as best as possible. So that's one small example of something that I'm really looking forward to getting into for this season. and then very briefly from the coaching world, as most people know from my background and obviously with my role within the England squad and the talent program around, what does it look like for us to improve the quality of the coaches, but also again in the same manner as with the match officials, raising awareness of the format and trying to bring more coaches across to Powerchair to be able to, whether it's get involved at grassroots level and supporting clubs, or coming in and getting a flavour of things from a talent perspective as well. Just having more eyes on coaching within Powerchair as well, and the experiences that they can bring to our game is only going to benefit ultimately player development. And if we have better players, we're going to have a better level of standard of competition. So within the National League and regional leagues, and then ultimately more talented players to choose from to move into the talent program and ultimately come on to play for England. So it all links together really nicely, and is something that over 3, 4, 5 years time, hopefully will be really, really profitable for everyone that is playing our game.
It does really feel like we're on the edge of something incredibly exciting. The progress, the momentum that we have is the best it's ever been. But we know that this is just the beginning of an incredibly exciting chapter for Powerchair football in England. And if other countries can take best practice from us, hopefully the updates and the initiatives that we share can be replicated worldwide, so it doesn't just have an impact in this country. Just to give a little bit of context on my side as well, the restructure has allowed me to step into Adam's old role of National Development Manager for clubs and leagues. So in simple terms, essentially to oversee the growth and the delivery of Powerchair football across the country, includes supporting existing clubs, helping new provision get off the ground. At the moment, we have a big focus on the east of England, so continuing our work with the likes of Essex, Cambridge, Lincoln, where we've got 3 clubs certainly primed to deliver regular activity in early 2026, which is very exciting for the sport. And as Dean touched on earlier, a big role on supporting the delivery of our leagues and competitions, such as the Slater and Gordon National League, the John Good Group WFA Cup, and new for 25-26 WFA Vars, which we will unpack in much more detail in the coming weeks and months. And alongside that, a lot of people will know the work that I do with communications and partnerships, making sure, to the best of my ability, the sport stays visible, that we're telling the right stories, and that we're supporting our sponsors and stakeholders in the best way possible. But that's a very brief update on kind of the internal restructure. But it's all incredibly exciting. And that restructure has allowed us to assess capacity for what we will now go on to talk about, because it's the main reason we have sat down together today. Because behind the scenes, it has created the capacity to finally move forward with something completely new for Powerchair football. We are delighted to be launching the Sporting Excellence Professional Apprenticeship, a fully funded, professionally recognised programme created specifically for Powerchair football players. It represents a level of support and investment the sport has never seen before. And it reflects where the WFA wants to go in the years ahead. And announcing it on International Day of Persons with Disabilities feels incredibly fitting, because IDBD is all about visibility, opportunity, raising expectations of what disabled people should have access to. And this program does exactly that. It moves beyond almost traditional sporting support and into something with genuine long-term impact on people's lives. Now, we'll go to Adam, the person who's led on the operational design of this program, in just a moment to break down what it is, how it will work. But before we get into any of that detail, Dean, I just want to come to you quickly first. From your perspective as chair, what does this apprenticeship represent for the WFA? How significant does this moment feel for Powerchair football in this country?
Huge, absolutely massive. So I think just to pick up on some of the language I used a little bit earlier on when I was giving that very long answer, Ryan, the reality for me is first and foremost, this is a wonderful opportunity for our community. So if people from an eligibility perspective and people that want to go and put themselves forward for the apprenticeship scheme, there's a wonderful learning opportunity that has real robustness to it with an incredible qualification at the end of it. Love that. So just a full stop after that bit, first and foremost. So it's on us to create something of quality. So that learning experience is fantastic for the people on the apprenticeship scheme. There's then that opportunity to build capacity by getting more people hooked and involved. And I think over the last 12 months, if I'm honest, people have come to me more than they've ever done and talked about what they could do, ideas that they might have, and where they'd like to get involved. I love that. So it means that we always take that as a sign we must be doing a lot of the right things so people want to actively come closer towards us on that side of it. This scheme, it's not the only opportunity to do that, but it presents a clear opportunity to do that side of it. And then just because of that, the way the scheme is structured, it will enable us to go again and look at, as I've alluded to on my answer a few moments ago, it enables us to look at the FTE, the members of full-time staff that we have outside of the apprenticeship scheme and also outside of our volunteers. So I just feel like this is such a significant moment, which is why it's uber exciting for me as chair to be on this. And actually, as you can testify, guys, I've got a massive smile on my face as we're doing the podcast because it does feel significant. It feels like we are launching and announcing something that is going to enable our future for years to come. And I'll go back to that growth word that I used, but more importantly, the sustainability. I just have just a wonderful sense that this enables us to build with sustainability, which again, prefaced by Adam earlier in the podcast when he talked about the Benevolent Fund. Benevolent Fund is about safeguarding the future of the sport. This equally, different fund, different way of doing it, but this equally adds that sustainability to it. So this is a celebration for me of protecting Powerchair football in England for years to come. And that's really important. That's the kind of stuff that we absolutely, certainly at my level, the trustees, leadership team, we should be considering those factors.
Adam, I want to bring you in now because for most people listening, this will be the very first time they've heard of this program in any detail. We've explained the headlines almost, but nobody yet knows what it really looks like, how it functions, what it actually offers. And you've been shaping all of that behind the scenes, kind of developing the structure, the framework, the mentoring model, and ensuring the whole thing is built in a way that's realistic, supportive, right for the players. So rather than me try and break it down, can you talk us through the Sporting Excellence Professional Apprenticeship, what it involves, who it's for, criteria, and what players can expect if they're part of it?
Not too much there, not too much. I'll just provide what I look to do, Ryan, I think, is I'll provide an overview because I don't want to necessarily bamboozle everyone with copious amounts of information at the moment. But I think giving that overview of what it could look like from a participant and apprentice point of view will give a flavour of the direction of travel that we're looking to move in. So this was an opportunity for us that it was something that we thought is, as Dean rightly said, around being able to really support and give our community another layer of opportunity. So the Sport and Excellence Professional Apprenticeship is a nationally recognised level 3 qualification, and it's going to be a structured program that are going to blend almost education, performance development from a power chair athlete perspective, and then the mentoring that comes in from our end to support players on and off the court. So the support from an athlete point of view, and then also to work towards the completion of a portfolio. So it's a 3-year program. It's a part-time program, so the workload is manageable in our view of it being approximately sort of 10 hours a week for apprentices, and the education side and strand of it is provided by a great provider called AC Training, and then the mentoring of the apprenticeship program to make sure that the apprentices are working on their portfolio and to look at things from the performance and sport specific side of things comes from the WFA. So the workload itself will consist of things such as workshops, some self-development tasks and reflection, and performance reviews as well. So a little bit of sort of analyzing performance as well. This in itself is, and again, we're really excited to be able to work towards this, but it's the equivalent, and it replicates what elite young athletes do. So, for example, players that are in academies at EFL or Premier League level. And it's another way of us trying to work towards that professionalism of Powerchair football and to try and, really grow that. It's not just grassroots what we offer as the WFA for our athletes, to be able to raise those standards. So it's going to help raise standards for them as players, but also, support them as young people and as young adults to grow as individuals as well, to help them to learn and develop as young professionals in that respect. We're looking at players that are 19 plus, so not in education and training. And for our first cohort, I think we're looking at approximately 30 individuals to give us enough of an idea as to how we can look to mold and shape our first year. And then from there, almost use that first year as a bit of a tester and iron out all the bumps that may come along at some point. So we're not saying it's going to be perfect to begin with, but then from there for year 2 onwards, then we can look to see what the growth potential is and maybe look to have another cohort of 30 individuals as well. So really it's for those committed players that want to take the next step in their development, both on and off the pitch. And just examples like it's going to work towards them as individuals, so their confidence, both on and off the pitch. It's going to provide them with more depth and knowledge as to who they are as individuals and as players. Obviously, it's going to be that recognized qualification piece. And I suppose, as a wonderful byproduct, it's going to, and again, links to what we said earlier on, it's going to support the development of the game itself. So again, if we've got better players, we're going to have a better spectacle for the audience and for everyone to watch. And then again, better players means more opportunities for players to progress through our pathways as well. And then from our point of view as the WFA, it just, again, it further cements that visibility of our sport and the credibility of what it is we're trying to do. And as Dean rightly said, that long-term sustainability of us as an organization and hopefully this program too.
It's so exciting, isn't it? I mean, just to summarize, so you'd be employed for 10 hours a week across a 3-year period. You're enrolled onto an approved qualification that mirrors what's done in academies at EFL and Premier League level, where you receive ongoing mentoring and support from the WFA to help you progress, and other mentors maybe on the periphery. And players are essentially committed to their performance standards and football development with education sessions, workshops, mentoring meetings, and minimum monthly training requirements. Have I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So there has to be, over that 3-year period, there has to be a real commitment and buy-in from that apprentice as not only in terms of what they do with their playing side of things, but making sure that they are attending the mentor meetings and they're attending those education sessions. So it's distance learning, so it's delivered online, and there are online education sessions that take place over a monthly and 6 week period. And you're meeting with your mentor on a weekly basis as part of that process to work through that portfolio. Um, and that is effectively the sort of that buy-in from them, as the agreement of this is what they want to do to be able to take forward as an apprentice.
I'm sure you and Dean and myself can already imagine the questions coming in around criteria, how people actually apply, because this is absolutely unprecedented for our sport. We've never had a structured paid program for players, and naturally, people are going to be asking, how do I apply? Do I fit the criteria? Where do I start? I know the finer details are still being finalised, but we can certainly give people a sense of what to expect. Can you just again reiterate the eligibility side, what the criteria will look like broadly, and how the application process may shape up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking for players that are 19 plus, as I said earlier on, and not currently in education. So obviously those that are underneath that age are still going to be in full-time education, or those that are in university, for example. So not eligible at that time, but then obviously post not being in full-time education, then that eligibility then would be open for them. And then, as you rightly say, we're looking at refining and just finishing off our application process, because we don't want it just to be the mindset of, oh yeah, I can just become an apprentice and it's going to be easy and I'm just going to be paid to be a power chair football and play power chair football. We're looking at it from the point of view of players that really want to learn and develop as individuals and as players, but also how they can support the WFA as well. Because as Dean rightly mentioned earlier on around that increasing capacity, it's also looking at it from the point of view of those apprentices and can we get them involved? Can they be supporting us at events or particular skill sets that they might have already? Well, can they bring those to the fore and obviously highlighted as part of an application of this is what they feel they can bring to raise awareness of the sport, of the WFA, to really continue to bang that drum, for want of a better phrase, for Powerchair football and the WFA and the direction of travel that we're moving in. So it will be a process that is then applications can come in and then they'll be reviewed by a panel to make sure that we can come to a conclusion of the applications that are most suitable to be able to come in. And then those that maybe aren't necessarily successful at this time, then we'll be looking at giving some feedback to them around what that might mean for them and how they can look at strengthening such an application going forward as well. Because as we rightly said, this is something that where we're working at a small scale to begin with, and obviously look for growth going on. It's a case of if it's not now, it's not never, it's not yet. So looking at things from that point of view of around, continuing to improve and develop as an individual and a player ready for a potential secondary application in 12 months' time, for example.
You've spoken about the eligibility and the criteria of being 19 plus out of education. Am I right in saying that you cannot be in paid work neither?
You can be in paid work. So for in other examples of this apprenticeship being delivered by other partners. So, for example, the FA do something similar. Some of their apprentices are also in some part-time work as well. So they can go hand in hand. Obviously, that minimum requirement is making sure that you can provide and put the time in as that sort of 10 hours a week to be able to contribute towards the work over that 3 year period.
And you've mentioned 30 as being 30 apprentices being the first cohort, the first batch of apprentices through the doors, through the system. Do you envisage this being scaled up and across the next 12, 18 months? And how does that kind of look?
Ideally, yeah, absolutely. So whilst we're making our, dipping our toe in the water of this for an initial first year, the decision was not to go too big too soon and too early because of wanting to make sure that, as I said earlier on, around, ironing out the bumps that we may encounter over the initial few months of the program being rolled out. So making sure that from there, once we are comfortable with it as an organization, mentors feel comfortable in terms of their roles and responsibilities and how they can best support the apprentices. That then will give us the time to reflect and review what it looks like for a secondary cohort um, of potentially the same size, maybe slightly larger, if we feel as if we have the capacity to be able to support them. Because that for me is the key. It's around making sure that the apprentices can be suitably supported over this 3 year period. And that is an absolute priority. So ideally, we're looking at giving us the time just to be able to breathe a little bit, and then look at what we put in place for growth for year 2, year 3, and beyond.
It's so exciting. We've announced the program. We've touched on the application process, but I imagine players, families, clubs will want to understand kind of the rough timelines now, the steps between today's announcement and the first cohort actually beginning. Have you got a sort of idea of what that looks like?
I think if we could, we'd look to do things as soon as possible. Obviously, we're conscious of timeframes in terms of where we are for Christmas, and the undoubted shutdown that occurs over that period of time. But from a end of January and into early February timeframe is what we're looking at as a time frame to be able to receive applications, review them, and then look at the initial starting point of an onboarding process. So I would say that the early start of spring would be the time frame for us to be pulling the trigger on this.
I mean, it's such a big part of the long-term future of the WFA and the sport in England. 30 apprentices in the first cohort, but as you've said, we've got very lofty ambitions to grow it, and I'm sure this will be echoed by Adam and Dean, emphasizing that when the full information comes out, don't rush, take your time, speak to clubs, family, friends, ask us questions. We will host plenty of opportunities, including Zoom sessions for the community to talk with us and find out more. But I can almost anticipate players just hearing that the bullet statements of being paid to play, to develop as individuals and want to run towards that opportunity. But this is the first cohort. And if our plans come to fruition, there will be several opportunities. And we will, of course, release and announce the full application process and criteria in the coming weeks. But the main thing to take away from this is just how exciting this is an opportunity and how this could completely change the trajectory of the sport in England. I think it's also important for us to give a little bit of context about limitless employment, if you don't mind, because for most of the Powerchair football community, this will be the first time they've ever heard the name. I think they're the organisation making this possible. I think they exist to create employment and development opportunities for disabled people within sport, helping individuals build meaningful careers as players, as coaches, as professional para athletes, and everything they do is almost about breaking down barriers through structured long-term development. Can you just give a little bit more information about Limitless, their background in para sport, and what made them the right partner for something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Limitless almost saw a bit of a gap in the market, really, to be able to look at supporting talented disabled individuals to progress in the sports industry. And I think that was the sort of the impetus for them to get involved. So from their point of view, that was exactly their setup in terms of working towards that. And from there, that then built relationships with other partners. So, they now work to employ deaf and disabled individuals as paid players, in some instances as coaches as well. So I know they've got a strong partnership with the FA, and as a working example, they've got approximately, I think it's 50 to 60 para players that are employed to train and play as footballers through the SEP apprenticeship. And they've also got a strand of para players that are employed as coaches as well. So almost acting as a bit of a pilot, which then opened the door to working with other organizations. And obviously for us being the lead organisation for Powerchair Football, again giving them another partner and strand of working with a unique organisation that works with a specific cohort and group of individuals. So it's a really exciting time for them as it is for us to be able to offer that employment opportunity as a footballer is something that, we as individuals now having this conversation dreamed of as youngsters. So to be able for us to try and put the foundations in place to be able to offer that for Powerchair athletes, I think is hugely, hugely exciting for us as individuals and for the organisation as well.
Yeah, having read up on Limitless, what stood out to me is the level of support behind them. I think they're backed by a major bank, multiple corporate partners, philanthropists who invest the time, the expertise, the funding into their work. So they just feel like the absolute perfect partner on a body of work of this scale. Dean, hearing all of that, the criteria, the routes, the next steps, it hits home how significant this is for the sport. It's real now. As you said at the start, it's been a year in the making, but we're now at an opportunity and a time where we can announce it to the community and start to get this project going. We've never had anything like this before. Employment almost for players, a national qualification, mentoring built in, a framework that supports people as human beings as much as players. And it's a different level of opportunity, and it will have huge ripple effects across the Powerchair football community, the quality of football. From your perspective as chair, how excited are you for this? What does this program represent for the wider community?
So my smile has remained consistent, hasn't it, all the way through the podcast? It's we keep using the word, but it's a significant moment. It's a significant moment in our strategy. It's a significant moment for our future of Powerchair football in England, and above all else, it's a significant commitment to our community as well. So, that's how I've used that word so many times, but it's huge. This absolutely huge. It feels important. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to platform it in this way, because actually the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm listening to Adam in terms of his plans and how they're developing, the more excited I'm getting. It's a significant, huge moment, the catalyst for the next stage of evolution for not only our community but also Powerchair football in England. It's that big.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, one thing we haven't touched on yet, and I think it's a huge part of the program, is the mentoring side, because for anyone who's listened so far, they would have heard us talk about the qualification, the player route, the employment, the education sessions, but the part that really ties it all together is the mentoring piece. And this isn't just an add-on. I don't think it's just a check-in. It's a proper structured support system that sits at the heart of this program. I think you said weekly contact, guidance, accountability, someone there to support the apprentice and help them navigate the football side, the personal side, the learning side. So I think it'll be really helpful to just unpack what that may look like, because players and coaches might not fully understand how much support they're going to have through this. Can you just talk us through the mentoring model, how often that they'll meet with the mentors, what those sessions may involve?
Yeah, so for the mentors, it's around trying to provide that key support on that weekly basis of catching up with the apprentices. So it's that individualized support through that regular check-in, be it virtual or potentially if the opportunity arises face to face, and to give the apprentices the opportunity to, work towards obviously the completion of their work in their portfolio, but through areas such as, a lot of that is around reflecting on their training, their performance and development, and helping to identify where they're strong and their areas for learning. Also around applying sort of the educational content that's being delivered into Powerchair scenarios and settings so it can help with the transference of the learning. And so with the completion of the portfolio covering areas which links to knowledge, skills and behaviors as a Powerchair athlete, that's really where the mentor is going to be providing that value. And that's then going to help obviously for the individuals around their own growth. So from an individual perspective around their self-awareness, their accountability as an apprentice to make sure that they are completing the work and keeping up and on task. So that might also mean that they're providing them with areas around, their time management, their organization, or their balance in their commitments, especially if some of our apprentices maybe have additional part-time employment as well. And additionally, some of the key areas for me, and obviously when we spoke to Dean about this, is around a role model needs to be the mentor needs to be that role model. So needs to link to obviously the WFA values that we have and be that standard of behavior and professionalism to make sure that they are acting as, almost an apprentice could look to see what they could be like through, potentially a role model in future, having gone through the program. And I think finally, a key part of that role model, of that mentor role modeling, is around, what that additional support would be. So some of it may just be around checking in and asking how they are. We're very aware of our community and some of the challenges that players and clubs can have, and making sure that if that additional support is needed as well, then a mentor can identify that too. So from our point of view, it's making sure that we can certainly utilize this first year to almost help create and shape what a mentor looks like and how we would look for them to act and support in that role. So we feel it's a really crucial area of this program that we need to have suitable and the right people in place to be able to act as mentors for these apprentices. So it's an area that we're really going to make sure that certainly with the growth and the projected growth that we have, any new mentors coming in future, meet that criteria and tick those boxes to make sure that they can come in because they're representing the WFA, and that's really important for us to make sure that they are driving those standards and holding those values throughout.
Looking ahead now, a question to you both. When we're sat here in 3, 4, 5 years down the line, what kind of impact do you hope we'll be able to point to because of this? Adam, maybe you can answer it from a play and a quality perspective, and Dean, more overarching in terms of the WFA and the structure down the line.
Adam, do football first.
No problem. I think football first, to summarize it, it would be a better quality of player. And that's a better quality of player because they are more aware. So more self-aware in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, areas of which they feel that they can improve, and also around the studying, the learning, how that correlates to Powerchair football as well. So not all of the topics. Certainly when the apprenticeship program was established, this is not been set up specifically for Powerchair football. So it's going to also add another area of challenge and excitement for us, isn't that how we can look to shape this going forward so that how it is delivered in the educational side of things has more of a focus towards being a power chair athlete. And I think that in itself is going to contribute towards a better level of player, as I mentioned earlier on. And if we've got better levels of players, that's going to just benefit the game in terms of the ability and the quality that we're going to see on the pitch, which is going to make it obviously a far better, an even better viewing spectacle. And then hopefully that talent pool as well, because those players, for example, those players that are 15, 16 at the moment aren't eligible, but in a few years' time they will be. So they're going to have that continual opportunity to grow as they get that little bit older as well. So it's all, from a playing side of view, really exciting for the potential growth and development of individuals and then the wider impact on them from a team and a competition standpoint as well.
And Dean?
And I think from a wider WFA perspective, if we think about outside of the playing side of it, the skill sets that people are able to bring closer towards the WFA, that will increase our capability and our capacity to be able to offer and go towards the other things that we want to move on to in terms of being an association and a charity. Will enable us to touch more things, to get things done a little bit quicker. So if we're looking through the lens of having built this capacity or building this capacity and looking 3, 5 years from now, that's certainly what I'd expect to be the case. And I think it will increase our operational quality. That's what it will do. So it's less dependent, and this is not to be taken negatively, around all of the amazing work that goes across our community. That's within the WFA in terms of the trustee level, but also, as I'm all too aware of, is the countless volunteers we have across the whole of community in Powerchair Football. It will enable us to increase the capacity, grow and operate things and execute things better than what we do right now without the reliance on people. It's good faith, and we do it because we want to do it from a volunteer perspective, but less reliance on that because they have to do it. By increasing our capacity will make a fundamental difference across our community. So again, I'm going to go back to the word significant. That's why this is so significant.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that from my side, anyone that knows me knows that I'm a huge advocate for players getting better at the sport. But something I'm an even bigger advocate for is the life skills side of it. The football is brilliant, of course, but the biggest wins are often things people don't see: the confidence, the communication, the leadership, independence, ability to plan, reflect, work with others. They're the things that stay with you forever. And that's why this program excites me so much. Yes, it supports the football development, but it also gives people tools as individuals that they can then take into work or further education. And that for me is why it's so important. Before we wrap up, I'll just open up the floor again. If there's anything either you would like to add, it does feel like an incredibly exciting time for the sport. So if there's any final message, please do jump in.
Ads?
I just think from our point of view, it's incredibly exciting, as we've said, and just an area that can open up so many potential future opportunities, be it for us as the WFA or for, and most importantly, for the individuals coming on board as apprentices, be it immediately as part of the program over the 3 year period or post that as well. Because if we are hopeful, and certainly with the plans that we have, this is going to enable us to potentially explore other opportunities and routes as well, be it from an apprenticeship point of view or from other strands of development that we as the WFA are passionate about exploring. So ultimately, this is, the very first step in something that could evolve and go in all manner of different directions. And from our point of view, is because it's unknown, it's hugely exciting and can't wait to get started.
And one final point from me, I started with talking about that question. Is there something that's the catalyst to drive us even further forward and create additional sustainability? That's this. In my, I'm unmoving on that, unwavering. This is the thing, alongside all the other things that we do and we implement, that's going to be, and it's used an awful lot, this game changer. But I do firmly believe this is a game changer for the future of Powerchair football in England. So I don't even need to make a statement around will the community embrace this and get behind it. I think they'll absolutely 100% do that. And I hope what this has done today is created an opportunity for us to platform where the thinking has been for, as we talked about, a year in the making, and to reach this point to push it out there and do that formal announcement. So no, just super, super excited for the future.
It is incredibly exciting. It is a game changer, but it also means we've got an incredibly hard task of topping this initiative on future International Day of Persons with Disability. But that just about wraps up episode 41 of the Two on One Power Chair Football Podcast. I want to say a huge thank you to both Dean and Adam for taking the time to talk this through, for all the work that's gone into getting us to this point. It's a huge moment for the sport, and announcing it on today of all days feels so right. A massive thank you to MK Battery, not for just powering this podcast, but for everything they continue to do for the WFA, the National League, the wider community. Their support genuinely underpins so much of the progress we're making. And for everyone listening, we know you'll have questions. We know you'll be eager to find out more. Full details on the apprenticeship program, including timelines, application information, criteria, next steps, will be shared as soon as possible across all of our channels. So the WFA website, social media, WFA Scoreline app. Alternatively, please reach out to one of us directly and we will point you in the right direction. But thank you for spending some time with us on IDPD. Thank you for supporting the sport, and we'll be back very soon with another episode. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Adam.